Okay. Hello, everyone. How many have we got here? 65, not a bad number. 67, it's going up. I see people from Indonesia, from Canada, from South Africa, all over the place. Excellent. Okay. So today's webinar is about blueprints and how you can build faster with Node-RED on FlowFuse. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first, just to give you a background. It's always good to know who you're speaking to or what they've done, and you can make your own judgments. So yeah, prior to FlowFuse, I worked as an engineer at a large automotive plant in the UK. I worked there for 25 years. In that time, I programmed PLCs, HMIs, vision systems, robots, databases, websites, managed network equipment, a lot, and integrated technologies from legacy systems to modern systems, data capture, monitoring, maintained servers, group policy infrastructure, a lot of stuff. And over the years, I created a lot of bespoke applications in various languages. And one I thought to mention here was I'd recently seen a blog post about some guy who created a web server in pure Bash. And it made me remember I did something like that in ladder logic about 10, 15 years ago. I completely forget why I did it or how well it worked, but it did work. But it wasn't easy and it wasn't exactly feature complete. And that kind of dovetails into Node-RED and how things have progressed with low code, drag and drop, and how things are just faster. And that then dovetails, I suppose, into blueprints. So one of the things I loved about PLCs was this online edit feature. It's a little bit like edit and continue if you ever use Visual Studio or some other programming applications that have edit and continue. It's just that ability to debug and fix an issue without ever stopping production. It was powerful. And Node-RED reminds me a lot about that. So, there may be people on this webinar who are not familiar with Node-RED, so I will interject little bits. And also the same with FlowFuse as I go through some of the demonstrations. You'll see bits of FlowFuse. It's not concentrating on Node-RED or FlowFuse, but more about the blueprints. But there will be some bits I touch on. So anyway, now I've sold you on the why. Let's look at blueprints. So yeah, the initial idea of blueprints was, in the beginning, it was to inspire users and show them what's possible and provide quick value and demonstrate best practices in the flows. That may be something as simple as flow layout or how to use parameterized queries in a database and avoid SQL injection situations. I would like to add that while I show a sample of what we have today, we are just getting started more or less with blueprints. We do have a few, but they're being progressed. Where I personally hope we take this kind of thing is like a jigsaw puzzle. I see it where you can import feature sets like building blocks and knit them together and form larger applications. Some of the samples I'll touch on are, I can't quite see my own slide, a CRUD REST interface, an OEE dashboard, an operator terminal, a 5S checklist, some PDF report generation, and some AI stuff. There's always AI stuff, isn't there? So we'll get started with the first one, CRUD MongoDB REST API. And this is just what we have right now. We chose Mongo as our first example for a CRUD. It could be anything. So to get us started, I'm going to show you how we create these. And I'm going to dive out of the slides for just a moment while we do that. So here is our website, and these are the blueprints that we have, a selection of them anyway. And how we deploy them, there's a couple of ways, but if you were on the FlowFuse website or you're hosting your own FlowFuse, then you come into your blueprints, you look for the one you're interested in, and you click deploy. So in this particular one, we're going to choose the CRUD MongoDB. I click that, I get signed in. I choose an application, which I will explain in just a second. I give it a name. Hit next. Can you guys see that okay? Do you want me to zoom up any? And you can see there that from the deploy button to selecting the application to entering a name for the instance and choosing what type of Node-RED I'll be running. This is already pre-selected because it's the one I chose to deploy. I hit create instance. So what's happening under the hood here? And also a little bit about FlowFuse and the explanation of what applications are. Applications are just a logical grouping of things. You might have in your application, I'll try and pick one that looks, yeah, okay. So we have some internal tools. I mean, we dog food our own product. So we have some internal tools where we send things to from PostHog to HubSpot, and we have some flow generation stuff, etc. They are grouped together in an application. They're just a logical grouping, and they can share some operations and resources like pipelines and snapshots and things like that. So let me just go back. The application, the instance itself lives within the application, and there's a bunch of options and settings and things you can change here. For example, we can disable the editor and change the code editor to ACE, which I would never recommend, change the theme, etc. So 51 seconds it took to spin up an instance of Node-RED. There was no npm install, there was no command line stuff. And that has deployed, hopefully, a blueprint. And there it is running. So we've just created a CRUD interface, which is create, read, update, and delete. That's talking to Mongo database. And typically here, we would use, I'll zoom up a bit for you guys. We would use environment variables, which are preset here, but just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to cut and paste things in just to get us moving. Sorry, this is the one and only time I'm going to go through this. So just bear with me, please. Okay, that is deployed, but what I am going to do is I'm going to add some debug nodes just so you can see that this is live. And the debug messages will appear on the right there. So the name of this, the host name of this, I deliberately chose the name so that I didn't have to mess about too much in here. So hopefully you can see my Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to operate this and keep my fingers crossed. And I got a result. Great. So I'm going to insert some data into that Mongo database. And if you watch at the side there, when I do this insert, we should get a pizza added, pizza Italian. Yeah, I am operating that, the post against the create. And this is fully working. And that took less than, well, 1 minute to deploy and maybe 1.5 minutes for me to enter some credentials. But typically they would be environment variables. So I hope you can see the value there that we just managed to get that up and running in no time at all. Ideally, here you would then create another one of these for another endpoint. This is a very basic food, get all, get one, update one, and delete one. But you can expand on that. The point here is that it's written out in a nice format. We have catch nodes for catching errors to send formatted status code 500 errors with just the message in the payload of the response. And I've included some documentation built in, it's just good practice. So you may not be the person that in future looks after this system, but I could copy and paste these into a terminal of course, set the correct host and paste this, and I would be inserting values in there. And I put documentation on all of them, and you get that out of the box. So if you wanted to create another one, you could obviously copy and paste everything into a new tab, but we also have this ability to, I said there was more than one way to import blueprints. And so if we go to the import dialog, you will see on FlowFuse that you get team library, which I'll demonstrate in 1 second, but blueprints and all of the same things that you've seen before are here. So getting started, third, import copy, get rid of this. And I've got a second one. Now, of course, I go through and I'll change these from food to, I don't know, something else. Okay, great. The next one I'm going to demonstrate, and I'll not be building these again. I might do one more, I don't know. Depends on time. This one is an operator terminal. And the way I sort of like to describe this is it is a very basic, but also very effective way of adding performance monitoring to an isolated, unmonitored, unconnected facility. You know, believe it or not, there's still a huge amount of businesses with workstations, or guys at control stations of workstations collecting no data at all today. This particular thing could be the beginning of your OEE journey. So it's a simple but effective operator terminal. It's deployed in, well, 50 seconds, maybe less. It depends how quick server land is. And it offers insights into an otherwise unmonitored or disconnected workstation. Let me see if I can get up an example. So yeah, I had prepared some here, and this one was the performance operator terminal. So this might be a monitor at a command control station where it's isolated and there's no downtime recording yet, but you still want something, right? So we set this up, and this is straight out of the box. This has had no modification. This blueprint has been deployed, and that is it. So let's say we are building today widgets, and we're building 10 per minute. You start production, and the timer kicks off. It's displaying that with the name of the product, what the start time was, and a bunch of buttons here. When the man has a fault on the machine, he can hit this button, and it starts a time. When the fault is cleared by the maintenance guys, he can clear that and continue. If he is blocked downstream, his rack is full, he can hit blocked, starts a timer, you get the idea. And at the end of the shift, or the end of that production run, he logs out saying, I built 20 parts. And we get a production report. Now, this is, it's like I said, it's super basic, but it's better than nothing, and it's a start. It's a starting point, and there's quite a lot there just for a very basic thing, and this one dovetails into a later blueprint. OEE dashboard. Okay, so this blueprint is definitely of the category of demonstrating what is possible. It's more about visuals, and it uses, if I remember right, it uses a local database with randomly generated values to make it look realistic and effective. If you deployed this blueprint, you would have to take it apart and inject your data into these places, or you could just use the database format that we invented for this particular example. We probably will improve this one in time and make it more pluggable with other ones. If you remember back early on, I'd said I would love our blueprints to be 100% pluggable, where sensible, where possible. In that, if we had a blueprint that was OEE database, then we have one which is OEE dashboard, and then we have one which is OEE alarming, and that sort of thing, where they'll just plug together and you can build it up. That's really that's my vision for blueprints. So let's have a quick look at this one. Did I create it? I did. thankfully. So, okay, I'm going to have to switch back. One moment. And go into the editor. You'll get to see the internals of this one. So that you're seeing the welcome to Node-RED because I've only deployed this. I haven't actually opened this and had a look. And that's why there's no data showing, because it is simulated data. And we have a little click here to insert demo data. Hopefully this time it'll look a bit more. Yep, there it goes. Okay, and yeah, I mean, it's relatively pretty. You could imagine this being in an office on a monitor alongside your station 10, your station 20, your line 1, your line 2 overhead displays. It's quite pretty, but because we needed to demonstrate how it might look realistically, there is a dummy data that you would need to pull out and replace with your own. The next one. This one is less of show off and more functional. In fact, it works out of the box. It's pretty much a standalone web application that gives you a 5S checklist that you can start using immediately. For those that aren't familiar with 5S, it's part of lean methodology for workplace organization. It's often the first step that people will take in implementing lean initiatives. And the 5S's stand for sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And it's all about, if you work tidy, then you work safely. And if you work safely, you're efficient and people are happy. And it's what we should all do, but it's checklisted. It's checklisted as an application in this case here. So let's have a quick look at that. There it is. So, like I said, it's not pretty. It's functional, and it comes set up with some dummy data. So I'll just quickly jump to the end and then go back to the beginning. But what we show you here in this dashboard is the areas that you have set up, the locations that you have set up, and what their score was in percentage. 100% being perfect, 0% being you're not doing a very good job here. And another feature is follow-ups, where we can come back to these and say, there's trip hazards, let's get this sorted. Who sorted it? I sorted it, so I can mark that off as being complete. The audit itself is pretty simple. There's 5 stages, as we mentioned before, sort through to sustain, and there's 25 questions in total. So we go through these. You typically walk around with a tablet and you would mark these off. Is there unnecessary material lying around? Nope, that's great. Let's move on. Our workstations organized and clutter-free, and so forth and so forth. I will really not bore you with all of these questions, but you just go through all of the questions until you get to the end. And when you're finished, that will be added and you'll be taken to the dashboard and show you any follow-ups. It's a fully working, simple but very useful application. And that's the point of the blueprints, things like this, to get you up and running quickly. And these can be your own blueprints. We do accept contributions. And if you're running your own FlowFuse self-hosted, you may well have your own. A quick interjection while it's in my head, I suppose, is if you build sets of flows, they don't have to be graphical like these ones. If you build a bunch of flows that are typically reused over and over again, and they do something quite specific, but require different parameters, or maybe you need to scale that out, create a blueprint, and your new team members, you give them instructions how to load that blueprint and what to set. And they've just done a full job that might have taken a traditional developer. If you tell them to go and create a CRUD interface, which technology am I using, and all that sort of stuff, and where am I hosting this? yeah, I think FlowFuse, well, FlowFuse, yes, obviously, because I work there and it's great. But I think Blueprints are start of something pretty good. So earlier I'd said something that dovetails into quite nicely was, I think, the operator terminal. And what do managers love? They love reports, right? I can remember building applications and routines and scripts and Excel spreadsheets with macros and everything. They just wanted reports. So yeah, let's give them reports. So yeah, so we built a flow and a blueprint that demonstrates how you might pull data from a database and output them as a PDF report. PDFs, I'm sure you all know, are great for emailing. They cannot be so easily tampered with, great for reports. Let's have a quick look at that one in operation. So the dummy database that gets added when this one is installed includes a bunch of fake Acme type plant line 1, line 2 facilities. And they are cascading. So if I was to choose, it's demonstrating cascading choices. You might have a line 1 and a line 2 with different sets of facilities. This particular example has line 1 has a screw insertion machine and carton sealing. And this line 2 has different set of facilities. When we select a date, it will check to see if there's any shifts and then present you with a list of shifts that were operated. Then we hit that and fingers crossed. Oh, wonderful, it works. We get a report. So I see there's a question in the chat. Do please try to use the questions and answers, but I will answer this one. Yeah, where was the PDF template when I needed it? Oh, okay, a joke. I thought they were asking where's the PDF template for this one, but there is no PDF template. This is generated in what we call a docdef as part of PDF Make. And the example is there for you. If you were to import this blueprint, if you were to run this, you would see how that's structured and you could change that up to however you please. I don't think there's anything more I want to or need to discuss on this. If there are any questions and you're quick enough to get them in about a particular thing I'm going over, please do put them in the questions and answers, and we can take a break from the death by PowerPoint. I do want to show that this is 100% generated on the fly. I wish I'd put a timestamp in. Wouldn't that be nice? And then you could, or did I? I did. Who knew? You can see there because the time it is in UTC. That can easily be changed, but it is actually when I press that button, 25 minutes past 3 UTC. So yeah, these are 100% taken from a database and generated on the fly. A future improvement might be that you cache these reports into a file store so there's processing, you're not pulling from a database and generating that PDF every single time on the fly. Or you could alter this to run on an hourly basis and compile your reports. And then it's just a retrieval task, right? Okay, let's move on. How many of these are all? Okay, AI. It's everywhere, isn't it? It's definitely a hot potato. So we had to put some in there, of course. This one is more about FlowFuse Dashboard and the helpful widgets that we provide and contributors provide for you to create things. We just happen to use an AI example here. Okay, so the emphasis is on the dashboard, in particular, the world map and an iframe and a chat widget, which is why we used an LLM type chat. How do blueprints differ from? I'll just answer this question while it's here. How did blueprints differ from flows? Yeah, they don't really, except there is some magic ingredients, things like which modules are used. So if you import a flow and it requires, in the case of OpenAI one here, it requires dashboard, it requires OpenAI nodes, it requires the chat widget, etc. If you import that flow, you have to know which modules to install. A blueprint has these stored internally to their logic and, well, to their setup, and they install in the background. So when you see me hit that deploy at the beginning on the first example, I hit deploy, it chooses our blueprint, it goes off, it gets all of the settings, and we're going to be expanding on that to offer even more capabilities in the future. But for now, it takes the modules and it installs them in the background, it loads your flows, and then starts up and presents that instance of Node-RED for you. So that's how it's different from just a flow import. And yeah, Ivan asked how blueprints differ from JSON export to library in Node-RED. Similar answer, to be honest. Regarding the modules being installed for you and things like that. So there will be more features that come that differentiate from standard bare Node-RED, but it's more like it's your repository, it's your set of things, and it's a visual landing point. Hopefully that answers. So this particular example, I believe Joe, yeah, I'm pretty sure Joe put this one together. It shows three examples showcasing OpenAI endpoints where it's just simple customization workflow to train and prompt your own personal agent in the display of demonstrating responses, and a better, tighter, more slick example using geography as a subject matter. Let's have a look. Back. Nope. One moment. That was the change. I'm going to show you the flows first. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with Node-RED, but not familiar with FlowFuse. You'll notice that when I open the editor, that we get this section down at the bottom. This provides a way of actually seeing your Node-RED logs, things that are going on, adjust settings on your Node-RED. And even better is if there are any assets, you can copy and paste into Node-RED what assets you're using. So the file node, for example, would load an asset. Or if you're showing an image on a dashboard, you might have it hosted here, and you would copy the path, you would put it into your UI node, and that file would be served along with your dashboard. And it gives you access to some other stuff here. But I just wanted to show you how much is in this for what you get. That's it. And this one is just a very, very basic hard-coded response demo. This one's actually doing OpenAI stuff, and this one's integrating world map. I haven't tried this, so let's see what goes on. What do we get from the hard-coded responses? Hi, obvious. Anything else? No. Let's try this one. He's not playing ball. it has worked. It does work. Whatever's going on in the background, I don't know. This is the demo daemons. Let's try the other example. So this one is integrating the chat widget, and obviously in the background, API calls to OpenAI, and also the world map nodes done by Dave Conway. I'm pretty sure Dave and some contributors as well. But let's see. So I live in a seaside town in northeast of England called South Shields. Let's see if it'll show us that. Oh, there we go. Let's have a look. Many people probably heard of Newcastle, not so many people South Shields, but it's God's country. So yeah, let's have a look on the satellite. It's quite a pretty town, if I don't say so myself. That is South Shields. That is, my house is on that image. I'm not going to show you where. Yeah, that works pretty well. Hopefully what you get from this particular demonstration is it's possible for you to take this flow, let's not call it a geography expert, but let's call it a machining expert or some other expert, and you can integrate with OpenAI, a chat widget, and yeah, you can get going quite quickly. So I've got a couple of questions here. Let's have a look, see if I can answer these right now. How generalizable are flows in terms of making blueprints? Can you make a blueprint simple enough? It could just be replacing a few parameters to use blueprint in new context. Yes, absolutely. That is maybe not so well executed just yet, but it is absolutely my hope that things like you would put parameters in there, especially the likes of environment variables. So you might say in the Mongo example one, where it had food/ID, food/ID, I would, if I get time, I will get time. When I get back to that sort of thing, that is where I would put environment variables, and I would update the instructions. I would possibly even include a dummy environment variable in the blueprint itself, so that when you deploy that, when it's loaded up for the first time, you just need to go into the settings and change one, maybe two environment variables, and it is fully working. If you do them yourself, then great, you do that and you put those things in there. Of course, there's other means of doing that. You might want to decide what certain values are via user input or via database or via a dashboard. And yes, you can do that. Things where it's a little bit tricky at the moment are security. It's brain has stopped working. It's certain properties within the flow that are considered sensitive, and they are encrypted and stored in the, I forget the name of. They get a little bit tricky, but I have a plan for that. So maybe in the next few iterations of things, they'll be even better and it'll be even simpler. And I would personally love a little dialogue to come up and say, here are the items that you should replace, and deploy, and it just fires up working. That would be my ideal. I hope that answers your question, Michael. If this question is related to the current topic, I will answer it. Okay, it kind of is, yeah. You're currently using Node-RED 4, and whenever you need to refactor or fix code, I have to manually copy it from Node-RED editor, paste it into ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot. Is there a way to enable AI-assisted code generation directly within Node-RED? Okay, let me give you a little example. So if you are using FlowFuse Cloud today, you will get this. Let me have a look. So let's say I want a function that calculates first 10 primes. Oh, let's not go that far. We have something called the FlowFuse Assistant. Let me show you what that looks like. So it's written in here what your prompt was, and there's a function, and I think that looks pretty decent. However, you may well be in a function mode at the time. So we also add what you call a code lens, and here we can ask for, forgive my typing. I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, I'm not even going to expand. I'm going to let it decide what it wants to do. Sometimes it uses a library from Node-RED, from NPM. Sometimes it does the calculation with a lookup table. We'll see. So this one is, yeah, it's DIYing it, but sometimes they actually add an NPM module, and there you go. So I mean, that's regarding code and function nodes and stuff. There is other features. More is coming, but one of the ones we had recently was you might be maintaining these flows, but you've got no idea what this bit of stuff does. So we've added this thing here that's called explain flows. And what it does when you operate that is it takes them flows, it packages them up into a nice manageable size, sends it off to an LLM and asks, what do you make of this? There's some other proprietary stuff we keep in the background hidden, but it generates, and if I quickly read this to make sure, and that looks pretty decent. There's actually an update to this where when there's a button down here that says apply that to my selection, and it adds a comment node with all of that content in there in markdown format so that it becomes part of your flows, and then you can store that in your flows. So yeah, so we are adding AI features, but that's not the point of this particular one. So I hope that helps, Ranjit. And the last one in this is, I think that's pretty good timing. We're at 40 minutes in. This is about AI. It's not about demonstrating tools and widgets that we have access to in FlowFuse Dashboard, more about the open AI stuff. And while anybody can go ahead and do this, we did this as a demo. It was pretty good. So we decided to make a blueprint out of it. And I think when you see it in action, it might spark some ideas for what you can do for your own business, for your own company. I think it's got potential. I won't concentrate too much on the details. But we have listed them out here. You can take a quick look at that, but it's using RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And this is a very basic flow chart of what it does in the background. These set of flows, takes your documents, splits them, embeds them, puts them in a vector store. When you ask a question, it takes the vector store to the LLM service and we get a response. And that's what it looks like. And I'll leave that on the screen for a second while I explain. I hope this one works. I hope I've entered the right keys and things. But when I deployed this one, I changed one setting. To go back to the previous question, I changed one setting, which was the API key. And I'm pretty sure it worked. I'm pretty sure I tested it. Let's see. Let me know if you want to see the flows on this one. But yeah, okay. So there's, as I said, there was two examples. The first example is some source material. So we've just added some dummy stuff, a company handbook with a few little instructions on here. Let's hit that button to load that material. In theory, what happens here is, according to that prior diagram there, is when we hit that button, it takes the document, splits it, embeds it, and stores it in a vector store. Let's see how that does. when I can find it. So how do I get time off? Let's see if it understands contextually, because there's a bit in here about, I'll not say time off, I'll say holiday. Very British. I'll say vacation for non-British people. How do I get a holiday? To get a holiday, you must submit a time off request at least 2 weeks in advance. What does it say here? Submit a time off. Yeah, that's nice. It's found that contextually, went to an LLM, took that bit, brought it back and delivered it. So this is a working demo, and it's pretty easy for you to get up and running with something that you can imagine could be quite useful for your work, for your workplace. If you have standard operation documents, or you have a wealth of breakdown entries from your guys over the years, feed it into an LLM, ask questions. When did this facility last break down? You know, I mean, there's power there, right? I wish I'd had that when I was an engineer back in the automotive industry. The second example is, I'm not going to hit this button. I've already done it, and I slowed it down to stop it hitting the service so hard, but it went through, found 97 documents in that sitemap, filtered on docs, and loaded its content, and did exactly the thing that we'd said earlier on that diagram, which was to split it and put it into the vector store. So let's see if it works. I can't remember what state I left this in, but let's have a go. Okay, that's good. I recognize this text from being from our sitemap, actually, not from the sitemap, but from a document linked to the sitemap. So that's working, that's great. And if you change that to your own sitemap and you only wanted to concentrate on tech docs or something like that, and that was your filter level from your sitemap, or you had your own tech docs sitemap, and you, of course, just set that to there, hit the button, and after it's loaded, it's a demo, it's a proof of concept, and it's a beginning point for something like a RAG agent chat interface. Okay, what's next? I've kind of touched on what's next in Blueprints a little bit. There's no great detail coming up, but there'll not be any surprises either. But using something like the ISA 95 diagram, which I think may be out of date since the part 1 update, but it's still relevant, it's still valid. We'd like to touch all of the areas, level 1 and above, level 0 being physical process, but level 2 and above. Currently, we have actually concentrated, our primary focus has been on the sort of MES and SCADA levels, and supervisory stuff like HMIs, and MES stuff like centralized computation, that sort of thing. And some of them demos were included today. However, what we'd like to start concentrating on more for the industrial side of things is level 1, which, PLCs, RTUs for data collection and extraction. For example, collecting process data for OEE, alarming, logging. In fact, our technical writer Summit is currently working on an OPC UA blueprint. I'm not sure when it'll be ready, maybe next week, but we are working on these, and we want them to improve, and we want to provide useful foundations and ideas. Even if you don't use them, you might steal an idea from them for something similar. Other things like protocol converters. I know I used Node-RED in my previous role to take Allen Bradley PLC 3 data and transmit it to Mitsubishi Q series, or was it A series? It was pretty old kit. It was in a an area that doesn't get many upgrades because the machines are super expensive. But we still wanted to record downtime data. We still wanted to get logging and things like that. I used Node-RED. I didn't pay for a protocol converter. In fact, we couldn't find a protocol converter for, it might not be in the PLC 310, but we're talking pretty old. We're talking pre-Ethernet and all that sort of stuff. Pretty sure it was the first PLC, the PLC that took the first space shuttle to the moon. I might be wrong on that. It might just be an urban myth. Other things like PLC to PLC protocol conversion, edge computation, and analysis like OCR, measurements and judgment and that kind of thing. They're the sort of areas that we would like to expand on with the blueprints. And if you have suggestions, please shout out. If you have some great ideas you want to share with us for blueprints, I would love to see this, I would love to see that, or I would love to see smaller blueprints that knit together better, or larger blueprints that are much more full-on applications where you only need change one or two parameters. Great. Please feel free to suggest in the comments, in the chat. And that is that. If you have questions, which I can see there's 4 open, if you have any more, you might get time. Let's see if we can get these. Okay. Recently, I tried Chat UI Node. This Node is great, but I thought how to clear chat history. That is a good point. You can you? No, you can cancel if the LLM is not responding or you have a network outage, it happens. And you get the little dancing ellipsis dots. You can cancel that by sending an empty payload. But for clearing, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm going to make a note of that and raise an issue. If you want to raise an issue, by the way, you can. And if you want new features, you can head over to the dashboard website and hit the GitHub link at the top right. And please provide suggestions and issues and bugs there. And we realize dashboard has been kind of a little bit in maintenance mode for a little while, but that's going to ramp up again very soon. Joe's going to be taking the reins again on that. Let me just make a note of here the chat widget. Okie dokie. Hope that answers. Next question we have, is it possible to import blueprints and keep them immutable, i.e. the user can build stuff around them, but not change them? That's not a feature we have. I mean, it's kind of like Node-RED has the ability to lock down a tab. In that sense, you could, as an extra step, import a blueprint, lock those tabs, and then your user via RBACs cannot modify that. But I get that it's not as granular as it should be. And we do have upcoming work, maybe in the next iteration, maybe in the next month or the next 2 months, we have work going on in FlowFuse with regards to more granular RBACs or role-based access control. So we might see some changes in that area, but currently not now, I'm afraid. Frederick says, what's a bit frustrating with Node-RED is how some palettes sometimes feel unfinished or buggy. What is your view on palettes and how do you use them in your workflows? Yeah, so I feel your pain. I went through the same pain, but that was, when you do something again and again and you forget how much it hurts, it's nice to see that you're saying that. We at FlowFuse are creating, I'm not even sure I'm allowed to talk about this, but why not? A certified nodes program where we will either be the maintainers or we will have active maintainers of those pallet nodes. And if there is a problem with them, we will chase these people up or we will chase ourselves up in the case of our own. And yeah, we are aware of the situation. What I find a lot of people do is if they go to the forum, if they speak on the forum, say I'm using this, you'll nearly always get an answer saying something like, "Don't use that one, use this one." So it's always worth shouting out on the forum. I'm always on the forum. I think I've read almost every topic on the forum, and I respond to a lot. If you have a particular issue with one, please shout up on the forum, and I will, no doubt, myself or some of the other really good guys, really strong regulars, they will likely say, avoid that one, it hasn't been updated for a while, or there's a known issue with that one, here's a fix, here's a workaround. Not ideal, but we do have a plan for certified nodes. Question from an anonymous attendee, if that is your real name. What is running the LLM? Where is the model hosted running? So for these very quick and basic examples, we are using OpenAI's API, and they could well be your own LLM, and they could well be hosted alongside or externally to your own FlowFuse, or if you're on FlowFuse Cloud, you could link to them from there. Just like that demonstration did there, how that was running on FlowFuse Cloud, but it was linking out to OpenAI's API. It could be your own API running your own LLMs. We have spoke about this. I don't know what the current status is. We don't want to go all in on AI, I don't think anyway, but where it makes sense, the things we've done, like the function node help and the flow explainer, and there's a couple of other little bits. Sorry, I didn't demonstrate them because it wasn't about that, but some other areas, like you can now in the dashboard, in the UI template, which is super powerful, but also with power comes complexity. There is now a code lens for that as well. And it's contextually aware that you are in Node-RED dashboard and that it supports these features and this is how these things are done, and that it uses Vuetify, it uses Vue 3, uses the options API. It understands all of that. If you just ask it, make me a calculator, it works about 9 times out of 10. And we're tweaking it, we're working on it. So to get back to your question was, we are speaking about, I don't know what the current status is, but we are speaking about doing our own fully trained, dedicated LLM that is very, very much aware of the capabilities and functionalities of Node-RED, FlowFuse Dashboard, and all of the contribution nodes. I just don't know what the status of that is now. I hope that answers your question anyway, Mr. Anonymous. And I think I'm done. I'm going to pass back to Indira. I hope that was educational, maybe a little bit entertaining, and I hope you get something from it. And please do share if you have any ideas for blueprints and anything around that area, or anything in FlowFuse and Node-RED and Dashboard, anything like that in general. All right. Thanks, guys. Over to Indira.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Don't hit leave just yet. Remember, a short survey will appear as soon as we close the session. I also shared the link in the chat. So it only takes a minute, and your feedback really helps us shape future webinars. Big thanks to Steve for the great session. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. And if you'd like to talk about how FlowFuse can power your flows, let us know in the survey, or just head up to flowfuse.com and click that bright blue button in the top right. We're also happy to walk you through a demo, pick a date and time. I share the links to that too in the chat bot. And thanks again, and until the next deployment. Bye-bye.